Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing out there? Yes, welcome to that part of the show where I'm literally jumping through hoops trying to figure out how to get everything up and running. But I am here. How are you guys doing today? James, I see you out there doing the good, doing the early bird stuff. Yes, you are. Yep, doing the early bird stuff. So, didn't get the opportunity for an awful lot of you folks out there to get the usual like, share. You guys know what to do. Like, share. Tell all your friends. Let them know what's going on. We are here today. So we got a couple of different things that we want to talk about. I want to talk about. Um, One is we have an awful lot of stuff going on in the neighborhood, in the issue, the communities. When we talk about activism, when we talk about politics, when we talk about the things that happen, exploitation. How you doing, Mike? Yep. Um, Exploitation. Things that happen in the community, the things that happen involved in activism. When you realize that there are people, and this goes on in just about every community that I've run into so far, there are predators. How to get involved in activism, be part of a community, be part of a thriving organization that succeeds. Well, this gets interesting. Reason why is because, let's face it, without a leader, without an organizer, without somebody who has enough chutzpah to actually stand up and take charge of an organization, stand up and take charge of a movement. Most organizations, most movements start to flounder. Yeah, I know. Little Mermaid reference. But how do you go about taking care of the arrangements where leaders, organizers with egos, with a sense of entitlement, yes, you use that word, the sense of entitlement, tends to go with being part of the founding of an organization, part of the leadership in an organization, that tends to make them feel like they're entitled to some things. Yeah. Whether it's compensation, whether it's sex. You find people involved who start to affect the morale of an organization because they want things from people that people really don't want to give up. They want things that people don't understand why those things are being asked of them. Above all, they don't understand why somebody is threatening their ability to participate in the organization, to participate in the drive, unless they do give up something that really shouldn't be asked of them in many cases. This happens in a number of organizations. Now, a lot of it comes down to who are the organizers? What is the credibility of the organizers? What do you know about them? Can they be counted on? How you doing, Dolores? Thank you. Thank you so much. We've seen it. Powerful people find themselves in situations. Yes, absolutely. Buddy, pay attention. Hit the like button, subscribe, share. You guys know all that. James. So we take a look at what goes on with a number of different organizations. And this is from the top on down. Every organization runs into this, which is why every organization, and I do mean every organization, needs to be particularly aware of the problems that come with this. You know, Clinton's, Bill Clinton, you know, he got caught enjoying things he shouldn't have been. Absolutely. Every hierarchy breeds competition, which makes space for people not strong enough to lead. Manifests in abuse. All types of abuse. Reason why is because while they're not qualified to lead, they lack the strength to lead. They still feel entitled to what some leaders enjoy, or what they perceive them as being able to enjoy. So be real about that. Reason why is because, yes, leaders are charismatic. Yes. Leaders get things done. Yes. Leaders attract things. There are people who want to do things for leaders simply because of how charismatic they are, what they're capable of doing, what they represent, because they are leaders. They're examples of what is best. Now, ideally, we understand that leaders are strong and they will not succumb to the temptations, right? Be strong as a leader. Do not succumb to the temptations, the things that are offered that are not yours to ask for. And honestly, let's be real. They're not yours to accept as a leader. It creates perceptions. It creates bias. It creates temptation. And here you are. We're actually looking at a couple different layers here. Reason why is because one is the perception of what the leader is, who he is, what he is, the magnetism of his personality, the capability of his leadership, the organization, the things that people find desirable, the things that people want to be part of, and what they find themselves being offered as a result. Okay. As I said, these are things, and I understand why they get offered those. Let's be real. Pastors present the best of us. Leaders, generals, officers, they represent the best of us. Some capacity of courage, whether it is social courage, physical courage, emotional courage. All these people represent something that the rest of us desire. And we think that by being close to them, offering them something that, you know, they can't actually accept, shouldn't be accepting. We can share in some of that they offer. Now, good leaders, they know better than to take it up. They have those conversations with the people that are offering it. They make sure it's understood why these boundaries exist, why it's important to continue to observe these boundaries. Problem is there are people who are weak. They find themselves in a situation where they are not good leaders, but they still want to enjoy this perception of privilege. They want to enjoy the things that good leaders turn down. One of the worst things in any movement, any organization, any structure is watching it devolve into a frigging orgy. Watching people give in, without understanding the damage that it does to an organization. Watching people demand things from people without understanding the damage it does to the organization. Pay attention, folks, okay? When you're involved in a movement, when you're involved in an organization, it's important that you, as a leader, as an organizer, as a supporter, pay attention to the things that represent failures in leadership, that represent failures in the organization and the movement, because it is absolutely critical for the success of any movement that these things not find their way into them and damage the organization as a result. Some of us find ourselves very involved in organizations that attract predators, in actions that attract predators. Yeah. Our culture doesn't value leaders because leaders challenge boundaries and limitations and organize people by ability and merit. We don't. That is, our culture. We grow bosses. We don't create leaders. Mike is absolutely right about that. Good leaders challenge boundaries. Their own boundaries, your boundaries. And they still maintain a respect for what are appropriate boundaries and limitations. Sovereign awareness, consent culture. You need to be able to make all decisions related to you. You are the boss of you. You are your own best leader. Consent culture. Nothing should ever be demanded of you. This is about finding areas of consensus. This is about finding leadership. This is about challenging your boundaries, not because the boundaries don't have a good reason, but creating acceptable boundaries. Creating the boundaries that allow you to excel in who you are. Not in violation of boundaries. That take away from who you are. Expand your boundaries. Remove your limitations. You are sovereign. You are your best advocate. You are the ones that can take charge. Now, where this comes around is because Idaho has a tendency for what we call the sovereign movement. It is about independence. It is about self choice. It is about self leadership. It is about self actualization. No one. Hey Jeff, how you doing, man? How you doing? Right now, the leader of the sovereign movement in the state of Idaho is none other than Ammon Bundy. Now, I got issues with Ammon. Ammon's an interesting character. Yes, he is. A little rich kid, rancher kid from Nevada. We all know how that ended up. A lot of history down there. Anyway, after the Bundy standoff in Nevada, Ammon came up to Idaho. Decided to become a politician. Ammon is running for governor in the state of Idaho. Ammon is running as an independent, and he's running under the sovereign flag. It's part of the reason he's running as an independent is because the Republicans wouldn't have him. Now, it's interesting. Reason why is because one of the people who represent his demographic, Janice McGeehan, actually lost badly to Governor Little in the primary election. Yeah, viva la readout. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Readout, the sovereign movement. There's a couple different ways of looking at that. One is in general, the sovereign movement is not a bad movement because most of it is about individualism. It's about reductionism in government, being able to reduce the government influence. Now, we run into a certain amount of problem. Reason why is because we've come to understand, yes, we have, that not everybody who is anti-establishment is actually anti-authoritarian, which is why the readout is such a big issue in the state of Idaho. Because they're not actually liberty oriented. They are dominionist oriented. They are about a Christian nation. They're about the law, biblical law. You pay much attention to what goes on with Islam, you could call it Sharia law. Because honestly, biblical law and Sharia law, you start taking a look at Deuteronomy and the rest of those, going back, some of the rules about what Jewish people can and cannot do, what they're supposed to be able to do and not do. Biblical law, Sharia law, moral law, morality police. It's a big issue here in the state of Idaho. Reason why is because an awful lot of people that moved here believe that we are a Christian nation, that we were founded on Christian values, that we are a unique culture derived from our Western heritage. Western culture, yeah, anyway. Rome, Greek, Europe, the British. For some reason, they represent what is supposed to be American culture, the Christian nation here in the state of Idaho. Readout movement. Yes. Readout movement believes very much in a theocratic Christian state, the greater Christian theocratic republic, the state of Idaho. Yes, sorry, Bob. Okay. Now, I don't want anybody thinking I got a hard on for Christians. I don't. I love Christians. I love the values that Christ taught. Love thy neighbor as I love thyself. Give succor to the traveler, the widow, the orphan. Oh, bye, Amber. Appreciate it. Yeah, and Mike, you're absolutely right here on this. With religious law, it must be voluntary in order to please God. Okay? That is what the dominionists do not understand. They believe that by violating free will, that by enforcing God's law through the violence of the state, asking Caesar to force man to do what man will not do on his own, we can achieve heaven here on earth. And now, most of us who've actually taken a look at what it is God created, what Jesus asked for. Understand that God gave us free will. Not so that man could command man to do the right thing, but so that man and woman could, of their own volition, choose to do the right thing and therefore ascend into heaven. Kant talks about it. We're going to talk about the moral imperative. Oh, love you too, Amber. Hey, have a good one. Okay, we talk about the moral imperative. We talk about Kant. Okay. Even Kant admits that without free will, the moral imperative has no value. You can't have the state forcing people to do the right thing and have the end result be good. So, you got several other philosophers that go beyond that. You talk about natural law, the right of self-governance, self-ownership, natural law, Thomas Aquinas. We go back to that and we talk about what is natural law. Self-ownership. Nobody owns you but you. We talk about that. Your relationship to God is a personal one. Your relationship to the higher being, whatever you want to call it, is a personal one. Without your free will, without your personal choice, gives you the opportunity to decide what is right for you within your own mind, within your own heart. To be able to pass that heritage on, be able to pass that culture on to your children and teaching them what is right and wrong. These are choices that need to be made voluntarily. These are choices. There has to be a choice. The choice has to be made free of coercion. This is interesting because as long as we're talking about philosophy, we're going to circle around to Nietzsche. Yeah, Mike. Nietzsche. Nietzsche's Madman. And Nietzsche's Madman isn't necessarily one I'm particularly well versed in. Reason why is because I understood Nietzsche to be a nihilist, which really wasn't. But the parable of Nietzsche's Madman was he jumped into the fray. Went out into the audience and said, "We killed God." Or did we? And jumps in and starts his spout, starts talking about, the death of God, about our own hubris, about the things we've done. We are better than God, that we know more than God, that we liken ourselves unto God. And through that, we have killed God. Killed God without a thought of what would replace him. What is replacing God? It's interesting because in some instances, we've actually seen people who look at it and say, we killed God to replace him with ourselves. It's our ego, our hubris talking. Are we truly qualified to replace God? Are we truly qualified to replace? Cast the rudder overboard out of shame. It's actually an interesting idea. The idea that, we destroyed God because we felt guilty in the face of God, in the eyes of God. We threw the rudder overboard because we believed we knew better than God and the tools with which he gave us to steer our lives by were hence destroyed. As the Lord knows, if the rudder was made by God and we're better than God, why do we need God's rudder? Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it. Nietzsche, as Mike has so kindly pointed out earlier today, is actually about our own hubris, where our ego takes over, where our ego has killed our concept of something greater than ourselves. Of course, the flip side of the parable is you take a look at Plato's cave, when we become the audience for the puppet masters. What is that? Kabuki theater? Well, Kabuki, I think, is political, but shadow theater. The idea that, you have the lights, you have the shadows, you're able to cast and create a play. You hear the words, but the words aren't coming from the shadows, they're coming from behind you. People behind the screen, the man behind the screen, the man behind the curtain, people behind the curtain. It's not our own hubris, but our belief. We fall for the hubris of others. We fall for the hubris of people who want us to believe in them, believe in their lies. Careful, Mike. Careful. You're talking to a hedonist here. The idea that God was wrong because we're right. Because this life, this plane was about this is about pleasing me, pleasing who I am, pleasing, enjoying. It's not up to me to sacrifice. I'm here to enjoy. To sacrifice for others as God demands, as Christ demands. Christ was wrong for that. Or was he? The shadows of monsters. Well, Mike, all men are monsters. All monsters are men. The demagogues. So we take a look at how that goes. We play it back. We take a look at our movements. We take a look at our responsibilities to our community. Now, whether you're looking at Nietzsche's Madman and Nietzsche's belief that we killed God, you take a look at Plato's cave, his allegory of the cave, that the speakers of the truth, once they lead people out of the cave, will only be killed by the cave dwellers so the cave dwellers can go back into the cave in their ignorance. Start taking a look at individuals in our heritage. Natural law, it's ours to accept or reject, but the rewards and consequences are independent of our will. Okay. This more than anything else. This is where Thomas Aquinas takes Nietzsche and Plato, puts them together and says, you can choose to do as you want. The results you get are completely independent, or are completely dependent upon your actions, but not for your desired end state. Okay. You cannot accomplish the end state simply by willing it into existence when everything you do violates the cause and effect. You can't approach a situation with a degree of hubris. You can't approach the situation as a blind follower. You have to accept natural law. You have to accept that your decisions have consequences. Your choice to ignore the actions of others have consequences. And when it comes to movements, when it comes to actions on behalf of the community, on behalf of yourself, on behalf of others, your decision to ignore actions create an effect. Your decision to act on desires oblivious to the consequences of your actions can have disastrous actions. Dude, the fair is always a tough crowd, man. It's always a tough crowd. Yeah, and Sandy, yes, this is the point. Be the best person you can be. And at the end of the day, the ones it's important to will know. Because in turn, you have created a safer world for them, a safer space for them. You have created opportunities in this world. If nothing else, you've taught them to be sovereign. You've taught them to understand that there are consequences for actions. Taught them the importance of mindful choices and intentional actions so that you can achieve the desired end state. And not simply want it into existence. Sovereign movement, Ammon Bundy. In the state of Idaho, he represents a certain challenge with regards to the readout, with regards to dominionism, with regards to willing, forcing, using the state to achieve an ends. And we are not interested in using violence as an ends to a mean, because that's denying free will. The process of denying free will denies the desired end state, regardless of how you want to look at it. Okay, so what else was it I wanted to talk about today? Give me a moment to pull that up here. Oh, I got some things going on. Okay. Yes, I want to keep that quiet. Okay, so actionism and safety. Hey, pay attention to what goes on in your community, especially when you're out doing things, when you're involved with people. The things that are important, making sure that they're safe, making sure that they're aware, and not so much just to keep themselves safe. This is about partnership. This is about consensus in creating safety, because you're paying attention, you're being mindful of choices, you're being intentional in actions in order to create the desired end state. Okay, sovereign movement in Idaho. Ammon, Bundy, Nietzsche, and Plato. I love those. And the last is the idea of being unchained. Sandy, 8 years of Catholic school? Nuns beat compassion out of you. That's what they do. The nuns beat compassion out of you. You make mistakes, that ruler is there waiting to wrap your knuckles. Never understood that about parochial schools. You know, the idea that you could be abused into obedience, that you can be abused into being compassionate to strangers. Yeah. Don't ask me, man. Do not ask me. Yeah. So one of the things when it comes to movements, when it comes to the idea of presenting free will, creating free will in organizations, creating free will in a state, creating concept of consensus and people working together, creating those partnerships in those organizations where people are not competing for value, where people are not competing for resources, but where people are cooperating and collaborating for the greater good of everybody involved. Okay. Not sacrificing of themselves, specifically for the purpose of being a giver, but with the understanding that you are able to enjoy a greater quality of life because you've collaborated, because you've cooperated, because you've become part of a team that was developed and created with the intent of creating a better culture and a better civilization, a better society, a better community. Not so that you can enjoy the rewards, but so that everybody can be lifted up the same. This is one of those things that's real interesting. And you're right here, Mike. Bundy's ascension is the result of the relentlessness of the state in spite of its incompetence. Okay. Read that again. Bundy's ascension is the result of the relentlessness of the state in spite of its incompetence. Okay, now what this means is the state, in its attempt to decide, create an end state through violence, and that's ultimately what's going on here. The state is exercising violence against the people in order to accomplish an end goal that is dependent upon a cooperative population. Attacking people isn't exactly the path to finding people who are cooperative. It really isn't. When you use the violence of the state, that's antagonistic. It creates situations, it creates imbalances. People who succeed are usually friends who already are in agreement with the end state of the state, which is usually not agreeable to everybody. And you end up with class distinctions based on faith, based on beliefs. Mike is a city employee. Come on, you're a government employee. But yeah, nobody in America is complicated. Food, shelter, companionship, sense of community, to be part of something bigger than yourself, to contribute to something that makes us all greater. And that's all we really want, right? We don't necessarily want to be top dog. At least most of us don't. We just want to know that what we contribute to our culture, what we contribute to our society, if it doesn't make it better for us, it at least makes it better for our children. And this goes back to the old, men who plant trees that they will never enjoy the shade of. What are the seeds we plant when we plant with violence? Versus what are the seeds we plant when we plant with peace? What are the seeds we plant when we look to the future? And there's so many different wise men and different, plan for 1 year, you plant rice. Plan for 2 years, you plant something else. Plan for 10 years, you raise something. You plan for a generation. You plant trees. Create a world for children. You raise children in a system that promotes growth. You're not locked in a traditional value system. You're not locked into a progressive system. that may or may not understand the consequences of radical action, the unintended consequences of radical action. Um, Crop rotation for good. It's an interesting concept. There's different things. Regenerative agriculture is looking at things. Regenerative forestry is looking at options. How do we do things? James, you bring up this capitalism versus socialism. Are you planting a tree so that you can take from people? Are you demanding compensation for being able to feed people? There's nothing wrong with being able to enjoy a just reward for the labor that contributes to the success of your community. Question is at what point does it become exploitative? Plant a tree for all to enjoy. What are we looking at? Food parks, community gardens. The idea that you can be part of a community and actually walk in and assist with raising food that the community uses to live on, uses to survive. Cooperative, collaborative, community. James, do we really want to talk about that? Car parking spots. Ooh, that one's rough. Especially when you understand that there's trees in just about every parking lot in the state of Idaho. Only they're not fruit trees. They're not food bearing trees. Some of them are actually decorative and dangerous to the local wildlife. Invasive species. Yeah. Um, Mike's bringing back the issue of the readout. Okay. This is the promised land. This is the land of milk and honey. Okay. This is the modern Zion. However you want to look at it, Zionism, it's actually interesting when you grow up in Idaho, when you grow up in Mormon country, when you grow up with a concept of an LDS Zion versus that of an Israeli Zion. What is the land of milk and honey? What is the promised land? And then you realize there are cultures in America, subcultures, that have actually taken the promised land, the land of milk and honey, the new Zion, and adapted it to a rather dominionist belief rather than some of the other more open and accepting beliefs of what Zion should be, as far as, bringing in the underprivileged, bringing in the poor, bringing in the traveler, being a welcome respite for all, rather than an exclusive kingdom for a very specific few. Zionism in America. It's probably one of the most dangerous ideas to come out of so many different Christian movements here in the U.S. Yeah, our golf courses, and yeah, all of the tiny trees in the parking lots. You just can't count on them to keep the car cool for the 3 hours you're doing the things that you're doing. Yeah, that's interesting. Reason why is because Western Idaho, Northern Utah, you start getting into Southern Utah, you're getting into desert. Okay, but the thing is when the westward migration of the LDS Church moved into Salt Lake Valley in eastern Idaho in the Snake River Plain region, it was indeed a very productive area. It was perfect for agriculture, and we did a lot of good things with it. You know, did extremely well. And for the time frame, for the involvement of everything that was going on in the late 1800s, when we were looking at making Utah a state, when we were looking at making Idaho a state, You were looking at the LDS leaders, and many of these taught of liberty, taught of freedom of choice, taught about what it meant to be free of the state and choosing to live by values through choice rather than living by values through mandate. You know, LDS teachers, LDS prophets, teaching in the land of Zion about brotherhood, about sisterhood, being able to live, cooperate, build community through consensus, through cooperation, through collaboration, not through demand, not through being bosses, but through leadership and expertise and developing skills through consensus and collaboration. Sovereigns in cooperation, sovereigns in collaboration. Right, Sandy? Getting hungry, getting hungry. You're being challenged. Camas Prairie. Camas bulbs. Yeah. Stuff. Cache Valley. A lot of beautiful agricultural land out here. A lot. Yeah. Now, there's some things that we're looking at here in the state of Idaho. One is in order for us to truly be independent, in order for us to truly return to the land of milk and honey, one of the things we need to stop doing is actually deciding that agricultural land needs to be housing. How do you grow food on land that now has a roof over it? And I'm not saying Idaho should stop allowing immigration. I know the reason why is because I believe in immigration. I believe in bringing new ideas, being able to create a progressive environment where people are able to live together. That combination of urban, rural, and suburban communities that are able to come together and create a greater good for everybody through cooperation and collaboration, rather than through mandate, rather than through universal policies that simply do not transcend the differences in culture, the differences in requirements necessary for rural, urban, and suburban communities to succeed and flourish. Unfortunately, we have an awful lot of people who come in and they demand universal policies. They expect the city life to reflect their rural values, or they expect rural values to reflect the things they want to see in urban America. The idea of what it's supposed to look like in Melba versus what it's supposed to look like in Boise. What Emmett is supposed to be in relationship to Coeur d'Alene. We can do better, folks. We can do better. And a lot of that has to do with giving choice back to the people. Choice, freedom. Looking forward to it, Mike. God, honest truth, looking forward to it. The idea of Cache Valley and Camas Valley actually being able to grow. Gummies, what is it with you guys? CBD on the brain, THC on the brain. Okay. Said this comes back to the actionism that I was talking about early on. We're going to circle back around to that. Reason why is because in 100 years, hemp, cannabis, marijuana, it's been illegal in the state of Idaho in one shape, form, or another. And for no other reason than racism, for no other reason than control, for no other reason than to make sure one class of citizen was guaranteed privilege over another class. One of the reasons why cannabis was outlawed here in the state of Idaho was because somebody in the city didn't like the farmhands coming into town and making the medicine of the farmhands illegal was a convenient means of making sure that when the farmhands came into town, they got arrested, detained, put in jail, and then kicked out the next day. Yeah, you're right. Illegal to grow, legal to buy. Get your gummies. And one of the other problems is like here, you go ahead and bring this up. Reason why is because marijuana activism, marijuana actionism, because it's been associated with party drug for a long time, is one of those activist groups, one of those activist communities that is notorious for predatory actions. Whether it's predatory in a sexual nature, whether it's predatory in a financial matter, doesn't matter. It's actually predatory in both. We have seen people in the community go after money. We've seen people in the community go after sex. We've seen people in the community demand one or both from people in the community in order to even participate in the actions that we're going to be taking. Expectations of leadership, expectations of privilege seeking, expectations of rent seeking behavior simply because some people felt that they deserved it because they were the boss, because they were the leader. Okay. We know better, folks. We know better. Boundaries. Watch your boundaries. Pay attention to what goes on in your community. Your activism, your actions, your leadership depend on being able to set good boundaries, establish those boundaries, and not only make sure that your boundaries are respected with regards to expectations of those around you, but make sure that you are respecting boundaries based on the expectations they have for themselves. Okay. Be good people. Be the kind of person you wish your mother could be proud of. Yeah, I know that's worded a little bit weird. Reason why, well, some of us, I know, yeah, yeah. Wish we had a little more respect for our parents. Yeah. Um, and yeah, James, this is the big thing right now. It's a moneymaker for those who can pay to play. You know, it's a moneymaker for those who can pay to play. Nailed it, Mike. Okay. With that, it's been 55 minutes. I actually started a little late. So I need to get out of here so that Joe Firestone and his team can actually get on with their show. Love you guys. You guys have been amazing. Leadership. It's important. Good leaders respect boundaries. Good leaders push you beyond your limitations. They develop consensus. They work for collaboration. They make good things happen by making sure that good people feel respected. They're part of the community. Family, friends, community. As long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. Love you guys. See you on the flip side. Meantime, like, share, all that great stuff. Now, I'm going to go ahead and head out with the outro here.